Hi, everyone. I have a very interesting guest today. Her name is Irina Pisareva. She used to be a candidate for the national team of Russia for short track. And it's been a while ago, which is why it's so much more interesting to hear this story because back then there were no social media, there was no publicity. It was very hard to find out how things really were unless you knew someone who really belonged to that culture. So I'll give her the chance to shine the light on sports back when the world was different and how those traits of her character that were shaped by the sport impact her life today, which is a completely different world. Hi, Irina.
Hi, Valeria. Thank you for the nice introduction. And I'm happy to share my experiences.
Please do. So let's start with that heartwarming story when you were walking on your skates on snow and your passion for figure skating, which then turned into a different, slightly different sport.
Yes, so my dad, he was very much into sports. Like he's the one who taught me to be into that. And he got me skates when I was about 3 years old. And I would wear them all the time. I would literally sleep in my skates sometimes and walk to the kindergarten and back wearing them. And what was really fascinating for me to see the videos, that figure skaters jumping, and I really wanted to be like them. So I practiced doing that in my skates. And I begged my parents, like, please sign me up for the figure skating club. But unfortunately, I grew up in a very small town. That's a province like 500 kilometers east from Moscow, Yaroslav region. And we unfortunately didn't have that club back then. It exists now. So the closest thing that we could find that involved skates was actually speed skating. And the short track, that's a type of speed skating where you use the hockey box to skate. So I started doing that when I was 6 years old, got my first skates. Actually, we used to make our own skates. Now you can buy them and mold them, because for this type of sport, it has to fit your foot perfectly. So we mold them ourselves, and we just have to buy the blades. So yeah, that's how I started, and that was the beginning of my story.
How supportive were your parents when you showed some interest in the sport? It already shows me that they definitely had appreciation for your interest, since they let you walk on your skates on snow, which slows you down. And a child of 3, 5 years old is already a slow walker. And so walking on skates, it probably delayed your walk from your home to the kindergarten by quite a bit. So I admire your parents' patience. And it was interesting how dedicated you were already before anyone told you anything about dedication, I'd assume.
Yes, they definitely had a lot of patience, especially my dad and my grandma. Like probably like most of the kids in Russia, I grew up with my grandma because my mom was working a lot, my dad was working shifts, so she was actually the one often taking me. And there was a little rink by the kindergarten. Not only we will walk 20 minutes instead of usual regular 10 minutes, but we will stay after kindergarten for another hour or two just in the rink, in that freezing weather. So I guess I was really committed back then.
That's amazing. And so previously you mentioned to me that your career was up 12, a little bit over 12 years in the sport. So it led you all through school and high school. How difficult was it to be able to keep up with the school program and keep up with the training schedule that was quite intense from what you told me?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a very good question. It's actually really tough because we used to train at least once or 2 times a day. And, with any sports that involves arenas, the same as here in Canada, you're tied to the specific ice times. So sometimes we'll have to wake up 6 a.m. and go train. Sometimes our schedule was like 9 to 10 p.m., which is also very challenging. Like I had, honestly, I wanted to perfect at everything, like perfect at school, but it was really hard to keep up with the homework, and I often will get behind in some grades, not just because like I wasn't smart or I didn't want to do it. It's just honestly the time. And there was a period and it was just so, overwhelming and too much for me, that especially also summertime when everybody, will go to like villages, Russian villages, and enjoy time. And we have to go and train at that time. So we will go out of town. So we will, sleep there and train, like just running. And in summer we were using rollerblades instead of skates. So it was just different. I felt some moments I felt trapped, that and I literally wanted to run away from this camp and join my other friends who at that time seemed to me that they had so much freedom, and I only needed to do that. So it's definitely affected my school, affected my friendships. And a bit later, when when we're teenagers, we want to start going out with guys and stuff. For me, it was also because some people who found their relationship inside inside that circle was a bit easier. For me, like it didn't happen. So I wanted to go out and have relationships somewhere else. So it was also challenging. That was the most friction I had.
So what kept you going? Why did you stay for so long?
The thing I'm really competitive, and I know like if I put time into training, I had a pretty good results, and I did enjoy going to competitions, to the different, back then it was mostly different towns in Russia that we will travel in winter and in summer. In summer we had rollerblading competition. So I like that spirit of, being able to show what I achieved, my hard work. So just I think that competitions and relationship with my friends that I build, because I think that type of relationship that you build with someone in the sports is very, different. It's very strong, very supportive. Even though I stopped when I was 18 and I'm almost 35 now, or 34, I still have a pretty good relationship with, all that people that we were training together. Some of them are now in the Olympic team. So obviously they had a different level of dedication. They actually came here to Vancouver 2010 for Olympics and Sochi. So I always support them, cheer for them. And I know what it took them to get to that level. And I'm very respectful of that.
That's amazing. So what was the boiling point when you decided to walk away from sports?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it happened at that age, about 18, when I finished high school, and I had to choose. It's either I go to the post-secondary education. I had to go something with the sports that will allow me to do the sports, but that meant that my career had to be in that path. And I had another passion for the foreign languages, like again, because watching this competition, I saw the sportsmen from different countries, and I don't know, like my dad also, again, big influence. He used to love learning languages. So I had a passion for English language, and I said, I want to go to school to learn language, and I want to see the world. And that first year when I got into school for studying English, we went for the foreign exchange to Italy. And that totally opened, my view for, how being in Russia, probably the country you come from, is the same, was pretty close for some time. People didn't used to travel much outside of the country, the same as we didn't see, especially in my hometown, we didn't see any foreigners. It was like something very different. Just, the food, the architecture, the ability to speak a different language that I like, to practice. And that 2 weeks outside of country just, got me totally like changed my view, got me addicted to traveling, I think, even though it was a short time, but it literally was something very new. And then I decided, like, I thought to myself, do I want to commit to something and just be training, and how I imagine my life like that. I think when you're a teenager, you get everything. So like it's either or, you like, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to, see the world. I want to travel. I want to meet people, different cultures, try different food. It doesn't mean that I stopped training. I just stopped. My mind switched a bit. Like, okay, I don't want to do it as a career anymore. Like professionally, I still love sports. I'll still go to the gym. I'll still go to the practices, but just for my own pleasure. Not for something to pursue as a career. Because when you started on this level, you get paid, and they expect from you the certain level of commitment too. So I think I got also scared of that part when, it feels like a job already and you're stuck. I didn't want to do that. So that was a turning point for me. And from then I started every year I was going to a different country, and, I felt happy. I felt free. Yeah.
That's amazing. So let's move into the next career. You are now in finance. How did you end up being in finance? It's a very interesting transition because finance, I don't think, is the number one choice for athletes to pick unless there was some influence maybe from the family, or maybe some inherited business they had to look after. But why finance? How did you end up in the finance?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Again, it didn't happen right away for me. And I think I started a little bit from behind, because from like as I said, I was traveling every year. And one of the years back 12 years ago, I came to Canada. And that's where I met my husband now. And it's been 10 years now we are here. And we got married. I had 2 kids. And first I started with the daycare industry, because that's what drove me a bit. Like I had kids, I was taking care of other kids. But then actually I was really passionate about how can I run finance for my family. We did make money, but what do I do with this money? And it's so different from Russia. Like, how do you manage it? Like how do I save? How do I budget it? So it just started from my personal interest. And I went to the webinar of the lady on, child education programs to see what resources are available. How can I save for my kids' education? So, and I just got interested, and I got the financial course online. Took me some time to study, but I didn't have the purpose of doing it as a career. But once I was studying it, I got really passionate about it, and like, okay, I want to share that information with other people who might be not aware, because in Canada, the financial education, for the general public is not that strong, in my opinion. So I just started sharing with, my friends and people that I know. I tried to get my license with the province. I got it. And when I went and helped the family with the solutions, my commission was a lot higher than my paycheck in a daycare. And I was like, okay, I know I can commit to that. And actually going back to the sports, that kind of a discipline and the ability to reach the goal really helps me, because being in this industry, you have to be competitive, because there is a lot of competition. There is a lot of financial institution, financial advisors. So you need to really do something above and beyond to be able to keep your clients, to be able to get the referrals. And the way our company is set up, we compete between each other in a good way. We have like a leaders board every week. We see how much everybody's done. So, and I want to be the first one on this board.
Of course. And I guess it's also because you don't feel it as a threat. You feel it as enthusiasm, to be able to compete. And some people might feel bogged down by it or feel too much pressure, where for you it's something you already went through and it's just part of you. So it's a perfect choice. What I love the most about your story is that it never started with, I want to make money. What do I find? What industry do I find to make money? It kind of gradually shown you that you have the knowledge, you have the ability, you have call it talent at some point, and then you started sharing it just because of the, I guess, graciousness of the soul, with the closest ones. And then it kind of grew into something bigger. Because in my opinion, if you chase the money first and disregard everything else, it very rarely will, grow. And even if it grows, stay at that level, or at least satisfy you at the level that you hope it will.
Yeah, definitely. I always focus on, on what people need first. Like, commission comes after. So focus on the mission and commission will come. So just always focus on family needs, really want to help them set out, the budgeting, the investments, make sure they have kids' education plans, make sure they have retirement protection. So all that, what really drives me, helping the people. And then, yeah, it just came that it became my full-time career. And I was able to combine my passion of, achieving good results, traveling, because, our company sends us on a trip all over the world. And this year was Calgary because of the restrictions. I actually just came back 2 weeks ago from the company trip. But yeah, it's amazing. So I found the place where I can, put myself, show my talents, help others, and at the same time make a living, travel, because I don't have to be attached to a certain place. I can, even like last month, July, I was in Russia for a month. I went to support my mom. She's recovering from cancer, but I was still able to work. I had my laptop with me. I was meeting clients. The only challenge was the time difference.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, worked out pretty well.
Right. I know you haven't told the story yet, so I really want you to tell it, where you were still competing here in Canada, for your own sake, not to achieve certain goals, but to be able to feel the power of your body again, and your inherited talent. Or yeah, I'd say it's inherited, because you already shown you have something in you by the age of 3. I think by the age of 3 you can't really nurture something in the child to be able to show so much dedication. So how did you have a break for quite a while, and then you still had that yearning within you to be able to let your body move in the way it used to for so long too?
Yeah, I stopped doing it professionally, but I never stopped training, going to the gym, running, biking. I always had that passion of taking care of my body, doing sports like hiking. So when I came to Canada, I was actually thinking, well, I was going to the gym, but it was not enough for me. And then at that time I found a gym that had like a kind of little competitions inside the gym. So they had the challenges, who could do most time in the plank, or who could do most push-ups, most pull-ups, like who could pull the most weight. And I was training again 6 times a week, already back then I had 1 child. So because I wanted to be the first on that boards. And then I've heard about this competition that RBC does, the Olympic Training Ground. I know how, probably on Facebook, I saw them. And they only took the athletes up to age 25. I was a bit older at that time. I think I was about 28 or something, 29. But I said I was still trying to apply. I just want to try myself out to see how I'm compared to the athletes here, because that's program designed for the athletes from all like different provinces. And I went. I was here in BC. So there was 5 different disciplines that they test your speed, your endurance, and I ended up being the first when they were testing the speed of the legs. And there is a special machine that tests the strength of your legs, and it's like, oh wow, like you have such good results. And there was over 100 people, and being the first, like, was really proud. And they selected me for the final, which was in the Olympic Oval. I went to the finals, and again, just to be again in that atmosphere of, competition, of atmosphere of, being able to show the strength of your body, and your, not only body, but only you have to be strong mentally to do that. So it just always, gives me the feeling that is hard to describe. And there are people who are actually, in that program, there were people who are Olympic athletes who used to be or are right now. They were, presenting to us, and it feels great to be so close to these people who, achieved a lot. And I just really enjoy that moments. And
That's great. So now you have 2 children. Are they in any sports?
Oh yeah. All possible kinds of sports.
So do you think they have a passion to pursue anything specific up until they are in high school or graduate from high school?
It's hard to say now. We're trying different things. My son is 7, so he is currently almost 7 times a week. He's doing sport. He's doing hockey. His second season in the hockey in the league, and he's doing jiu-jitsu and karate. In summer he was doing soccer. So he tried already like basketball, volleyball, so all swimming. So just to see what fits, because I think at this age it's a bit hard to decide. Back when I was a child, I kind of knew what was my passion about the skating, but for him, because there's so much choice, and there is also other sports that were not presented when I was a kid, like lacrosse and all this type. So, and my son, he wants to try everything, so we're just trying out. It seems like he's sticking with the hockey so far. That's what he likes the most. And yeah, my daughter is only 3, so she's been into swimming classes, and I just don't know how I'm going to manage to take into so many different activities, but as long as I like it, it's.
Do the kids ask you about your sports career from before?
They do, and I actually took them this time when I was in Russia last month. I took them to the ice. They got to try the skates that we use, the particular type of skates. So they was skating with me on the ice. They got to meet my friends who are in Olympic team. They got to meet the kids, wherever have the kids. So I tell them the stories. I show them. I don't have pictures on the social media because it was a lot of years ago, but
way back when. Yeah,
printed pictures, so I show them and show them what I was able to achieve. And I think they just we like to do a lot of sports activities as a family, also, like going together, rollerblades and hiking. So they pick that all up. And
that's amazing. And so it's fascinating how you're still keeping up and keeping in touch with friends, especially when you chose a completely different avenue. They stayed in sports. You moved so far away and still are keeping in touch. It's amazing how strong the bond is. Do you notice any difference in the way people are looking at their professional life? You finished it when you were 18. People who you're still keeping in touch with are probably around their 30s, 35 years old, which is, the amount of years that they've dedicated to a sport is insane. But there's a point when your body is already giving in and you have to consider different options. So how do you see your friends are coping with the change?
Yeah, that's a very good conversation, actually. And I was talking a lot to them over the time when I came to see, and they said, like, literally we don't know what to do, because they look at me like literally admiring, like how did you do that, like how did you manage to do something very different, because for them that's their life, like literally that the girl who reached the level of Olympic team, and she's been twice in the Olympics. Now she has kids, and she's like, I don't know how to do anything else except that, like my only option is to go teach others, but that's not what I'm passionate about. I was passionate of doing the sport, but I'm not really the type of person who will go and teach other people. So she was kind of really mentally and stuck at that point, that what do I do now with my life? I'm 35, my sports career is ending, even though I still compete, but obviously like I don't have the same maybe like physical shape and the abilities anymore as people who are in their 20s. So yeah, I had that. Her husband actually is also the one who was competing with her, but he finished a bit earlier, and it took him probably 10 years to finally switch. And he's also actually now in finance, but back in Russia. I know what's that thing about finance, but yeah, other people, they mostly train in others, and even if they're not passionate about that, because it's still doing it yourself and teaching, you have to have a specific talent to teach others, and you have to like it. It's not like, okay, I've done it and now I'm going to do it to the other people. So they seem honestly a bit stuck at that point.
Do you offer any advice to them?
Any advice to them? Well, since I'm in a different country, like they ask like, oh, how did you get involved in that? We want to do the same. I'm like, how things work in Russia, it's slightly different. I'm guessing education probably at that type of all day is different than doing it in Canada. You can go and see people in their like 60s, 70s pursuing a new career. Mm-hmm. Like in Russia, it's a bit of different mentality. Like people look at you weird if you try to do something different than that age. So yeah, they do ask for my advice, but I don't think it's very relevant because we live in different countries. Very different.
Yeah. For sure. Isn't it interesting how different countries are wired differently, and how people can be in the same sport but have a completely different outlook on the world and on the profession and on their career and life altogether. You take someone from Great Britain and then you take someone from Russia, and they probably have the same physical abilities but completely different mentality.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's very interesting to hear a story from someone who made such a big transition, not only from the sport but also into a different country, and found herself in a country, country where you weren't born. My last question is, how did you feel being an athlete in Russia, and whether you mentioned to anyone that you're an athlete in Canada, and how, if it was different?
Yeah, actually, I did when I was doing some speed skating here too, short track, but again, just for my own pleasure, because here it's more like recreational, and especially in British Columbia, that kind of sport is not very strong. It's strong in Calgary. And how it happened to me, I went to the rink and I saw the person wearing skates, like short track skates. And I approached him. I was like, "Oh, you're wearing the skates? He's like, is there any, places where you can do it? Come and skate." And he pointed me out towards like a Burnaby speed skating club. And I went there, but they do it more like 2 times a week. I came, I shared that I was doing it in the past. They put me in one of their, advanced groups. So I was coming training with them 2 times a week. Sorry, I lost a bit of what I was going to say.
Yeah. So how did you feel being an athlete in Russia, the image of an athlete in Russia? How is it different as an image of an athlete in Canada?
Yeah, I don't know. In my hometown, because it's really small, lots of people doing sports, because I think there's not much else to do. There is a lot, yeah. And it's kind of a regular thing. Somebody is doing something, related to sports. Here I feel it's more when you have that image of the athlete that shows that you really achieved something, because here most of the time, you have to pay for to go to do sports. You have to have, either your parents have to have money, to put you in hockey or even in the speed skating. It's not cheap. In Russia, you don't pay for that, and you actually, if you get a certain level, you get paid. So I think here it gets more, in my point of view, you're maybe more respected that you went through that, and it's more for people who have, because not everybody could afford it. Like, honestly, in Canada, it's even if the kids want, but the parents don't quite have enough money, they cannot put them into hockey or cannot put them somewhere else. So it's that kind of the contradictory. So there you can be talented and have everything open for you to do it and achieve. Here, yes, you can be talented, but you have some types of, have to have certain resources to achieve that.
Right. Yeah. So in Russia, you have everything available to you, and sports is not as respected, where in Canada, you're limited, and the sports are looked at as if it's privileged, as if it's a certain status, as if sports is actually translating your financial status and your family's financial status. Isn't it interesting how it's a completely different approach, the way children are raised and able to comprehend? I think the extremes are never the best, right? The golden middle is always what we should be striving for. So the availability of sports, at least at a certain age, where children can try out their talents, and maybe win some scholarships where the government will be supporting it, and then changing the image in Russia, where if you are talented in sports, it doesn't mean that you are not talented in other areas where you can be studious, and you can be an athlete, but you can just as well become a scientist, and I don't think in Russia the two, sports and science ever correlate or connect.
No, they kind of because they kick you out of the university if you miss, you cannot miss classes. So the only university that doesn't kick you out is actually the sports, if you're doing the same as your career. Yeah. So I couldn't miss classes. So that's for people who wanted to do something else. It's, even if they're doing it, in a distance, I forgot how to say in English still, but you don't get the same level of education.
Right. Well, what an interesting perspective. It's always great to have an experience in multiple places to be able to compare, not necessarily to judge one or the other, but just have an outlook how things can be different, and one way is not necessarily the only way.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Irina. I think it's a great way for people who have never been in Russia, who are not familiar with the way sports work in Russia, and are only perceiving Russian sports through the lens of the camera, through the TV and the way it's being portrayed. It's always interesting to hear how things are truly on the inside, and you just provided such a great insight into short track, which is amazing, and I appreciate that you found time to share your story.
Thank you so much, Valeria, for the opportunity to share.